Call the meeting to order. Meeting of the Carver Select Board on Friday, April 3rd, 9 p.m. 9 a.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Your prayer.
Almighty God, humbly we pray your blessing as we concern our life with the opportunity to serve our community. Enhance us with your spirit of dignity and selflessness. May we become instruments of support and understanding as we seek to bring an environment of trust and purpose among all who provide the many services that can make us all that we become. Help us achieve the goals of our commitment in this office that is now our responsibility. And especially, we lift our prayers for all the citizens of our community that we have been allowed to serve, that they may discover the fullness and joy of life that we all seek, and keep those serving in our armed forces and our first responders in our hearts and thoughts. Amen.
Amen. I should add that the meeting is being cablecast by Area 58 Community Access Media, Channel 15. We do have openings on several committees. Please refer to the Select Board page on our website for a listing and application. Before getting started, I just wanted to send a personal message out on behalf of the board, that hoping that everyone out there is safe, staying safe. Recognize that if you do have any difficulties, you can get hold of the town through 911 or calling emergency dispatch. We'll have an update immediately on public safety and how we're doing in town and responding to this crisis. We are in a pandemic. This is not just affecting the town of Carver or the state. It's affecting the entire country. It's affecting the entire world. And this is all uncharted territory. We are working our way through. I know I'm very proud of the effort that we're making in this town. And I just hope going forward that we can, for the moment, set aside politics and recognize everyone's trying to do their job as best they can. And while disagreements are fine, I just hope that we can find it in ourselves to try to take the edge off of our responses to what's going on in town and in the state and in the country, and just try to work with each other and help each other and be there for each other at this time. One other thing I'll mention is that we'll discuss it at the end of the meeting, but my expectation is that this may be the last time we get together in person for a meeting. We may be going to Zoom. Those meetings, just to assure everyone, will be rebroadcast. You will be able to see the public will be able to see our meetings as we move forward, but in the interest of public safety and social distancing, it's likely that our meetings will be held virtually going forward. With that, we have with us our, essentially what we're referring to now as our head of public safety, Tom Walsh, Emergency Management Director. Tom, up to you for an update on where we're seeing with public safety in town.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Where this is, I'm going to kind of go through the departments and try to cover all of public safety's efforts that they're making. Where this is a health emergency at its core, we'll start with the health department, and our health agent, Kevin Fork, has been working very effectively and communicating very effectively with the public safety departments. He is getting reports through the Maven system, which is, he's getting that information from the Visiting Nurse Association that Carver uses, where he is getting an address of any positive COVID-19 patients that have tested positively, confirmed as positive, through the Maven system, and then he's passing that on to all the public safety agencies, and our dispatch centers are keeping a list of all addresses so that they can protect responders or people going there for any service at all in the as long as it's going on. The visiting nurses are then contacting if someone who is been told to isolate because they're positive for COVID-19, the visiting nurses are contacting that person and interviewing them, and then giving them guidance on what they should be doing as since they are isolated, and sending them a 3-page letter that outlines in a very detailed fashion the do's and don'ts of being isolated for being positive for COVID-19. They're also, when they're doing that interview, they're doing contact tracing to the extent possible to try to find out who that patient had been in contact with, and then contacting those people, interviewing them as well, and where appropriate, advising them that they should quarantine, and then sending them a letter, a 3-page letter, giving them the do's and don'ts of quarantining. They're doing, and they're also monitoring the patients, following up with them. They were doing it on a daily basis, but now their workload's getting a little busier, so it's probably more going to be on a weekly basis where they check in with the patients and make sure they've got what they need and give them any guidance that might be necessary. And then they'll also be the ones who will tell us when the patient can be removed from the list because they've hopefully recovered fully and reached a point where they're no longer under isolation. So I think that the communication between our health agent and the public safety departments and the efforts of our Visiting Nurse Association are doing a good job. From an EMS perspective, all of our personal protective equipment guidelines and isolation procedures are in place. We have had some patients that we have transported, but there are currently 9 patients in Carver that have been identified as being positive for COVID-19. 3 of those patients were transported by Carver EMS. When a patient we transport tests positive, I'm contacted. We don't really wait for it to come through the Maven system, which might have a little bit of a delay. I'm contacted directly by the infection control people from the Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital, because I'm the designated infection control officer for the EMS service, and advised that the patient had been tested positive. And then I review the paperwork and talk to the crew that cared for the person and determine whether there's anything that might be construed to be an unprotected exposure. Did they know what they were dealing with, and did they use the full isolation procedures that we have, which are pretty detailed for the ambulances. We have had one unprotected exposure of a paramedic, and he voluntarily offered to self-quarantine. He's someone who could work from home. He's a computer guy, and he's now about 8 days into his 14 days and without any symptoms at all. And right now, he could actually go back to work. He doesn't have a shift for another couple of days, but the guidelines right now that have been coming out from some of the medical directors are that once you think you've been exposed, if you go 3 or 4 days without any symptoms at all, you're probably wearing a mask and return to work, because the feeling is that it'll show up within that period of time. We don't have any illnesses of anyone among our staff in EMS related to COVID-19. We do have 2 people one who went home sick last Saturday afternoon and was tested on Monday morning, and he sent me a text saying the good news was he doesn't have COVID-19, but the bad news is he's got the flu. And so he's laying low at this time, but no COVID-19 exposures. Some of the PPE that we have ordered is on back order, but the supplies we have now are adequate, and we're doing pretty good in that regard. Police Department, I believe all of the protocols have been in place, and the police chief has, developed all the protocols, working with various other police departments, and I think they have the protective equipment that they need as well. And our dispatch center, our public safety dispatch center, which is in the police station, and our fire dispatch center, which is obviously in the fire station, are not only keeping the list of positive addresses in town where there are COVID-19 patients, but they're also querying all callers who call for any reason, for any service whatsoever, an inspection of some sort or whatever, and obviously also on an emergency basis for, are there any people sick in the travel, and is there any sickness in the home, so that our first responders or people responding to these calls and requests for services will be alerted to that and can take appropriate PPE protections, which they all have and as available to them. And the same with our fire department, as far as they have all of their protocols and procedures in place and have done everything appropriate. We've moved into kind of a phase this week where we began to try to address not only our personal sanitation for people who might have dealt with these people, as well as just being out and around, but also sanitizing our buildings. Through Dave Siedendorf, I contacted ServPro and asked him for a quote on our EMS station, and was given a quote of $887, and I called and was going to order that. And I was advised that ServPro had decided that in support of their first responders, that they were going to do fire stations, police stations, and EMS stations free of charge, sanitizing them. So I think that that's certainly just the opposite of price gouging, and very admirable. And at some point, whenever it's appropriate, I think it's something that the Board of Selectmen should consider sending them some recognition for doing the right thing when we needed them. They did come the day before yesterday and sanitized very effectively, from what I can tell, the EMS station. They were going to do the police station yesterday. I don't know if they did, Mark. They did do the police station yesterday. And the fire chief's, making his plans to have it done as well. We have also purchased 3 sprayers so we're now able to carry 1 on each of our ambulances, and our decontamination procedures when we do transport someone who is suspect of COVID-19 is to now be able to kind of spray down the back of the truck and then wipe it all down. It's kind of a labor-intensive process. We have on back order something that is more like a fogger that you wouldn't have to wipe all of the surfaces down on, but that's on back order right now. And I think that our operation and maintenance department is also working very cooperatively with all the departments. And Dave Siedendorf is coordinating the sanitation efforts of the departments as well as having one of these foggers on back order as well. Emergency management, it's open 5 days a week, and we really haven't had any requests for any type of assistance. We have, I have been talking with the mobile home parks and have had some questions, some of which have been referred to the health agent. The most recent question was, what about what we call snowbirds, people that are down in Florida for the winter and generally come back right about Easter. The guidelines per the governor would be that you should self-quarantine for 14 days after returning from an out-of-state position for any period of time. And through Kevin, that was passed on to the person that had called. And I also, as I always do, I just want to commend the management of all the public safety departments and the Board of Health and Operations and Management for how well they're working together and how well everyone's working and taking such a cooperative and collegial approach to preparing the town. I really feel that we have a strong management team in town and a strong public safety team. I do want to just take a minute as your EMS chief to just comment that this is probably the most difficult time that an EMS service will ever have. Certainly one of the most stressful times. People working in EMS today as EMTs and paramedics will probably never work again in a global pandemic. At least we hope so. Last one was 102 years ago. And while everyone's, all public safety are dealing with this and coming to work and being the ones to come to work, these are the people that are actually climbing in the back of the ambulance with the patients, dealing with the patients in their homes. And the unique thing about EMS has always been that you're not only a healthcare provider, you're also a first responder. And so you're dealing with people in the most uncontrolled environment. Someone in a hospital, nurses, doctors, greatest people in the world, not knocking against them, but they usually are dealing in a relatively controlled environment with someone who's in a bed and they're not picking them up in the bathroom or taking them off the toilet or picking them up off their floor or in their homes doing that. And it's something that's unique to EMS, but in these times it's particularly kind of scary. You know, they know that they're dealing with something that's very contagious, that has, although it's not very, very deadly, it's 10 times more deadly than the average flu is the current prediction. And they're coming every day, and I just am very proud of the EMTs and paramedics in Carver. And we haven't had, I know there are some places where people are finding reasons not to come to work, and that's not true in Carver. They're coming, they're doing a great job, they're following the procedures, which are changing on a daily basis. If I read everything I get every day, someone else will have to do my job, because there's that much stuff flowing out of Department of Public Health, Center for Disease Control, Office of Emergency Medical Services, Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital. It just keeps coming and coming and coming. They're keeping up with it. They're making the changes. The senior staff in the department's doing the same thing. And I don't tell you this to glorify anything, but I'm proud of them, and I think it's important to them that you be proud of them. So I wanted to remind you of the job they're out there doing. That's it.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I just want to take a minute to thank all three emergency service departments for what they're doing, because I've heard nothing but positive things around the town, and this is the time when these services really shine. So I appreciate all you do. I know the townspeople do too, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.
Mr. Dunham?
I'd like to echo Mark's remarks, and also the fact that, the citizens need to know these guys aren't doing this for big money.
No.
They're doing it out of a sense of service to the town, and they're going above and beyond. And I think not only the board, but everybody in town should be very thankful and appreciative of EMS, police, and fire for the work you're doing, especially during these trying times. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Sarah?
Yeah, I just want to echo what my colleagues have said, and please tell all your people in all three departments how much we appreciate what they're doing. It means a lot.
Bob?
Again, too, thank you very much. I have a couple of questions. What's the time frame from the time that the town is notified of the positive people in town to the VNA getting to the patient? Is there
The ones I'm aware of, where I happen to be aware when they called them, it was within the day.
Excellent.
Whether that'll be continuing, I don't know, but it was right away. It was the same day that I was dealing with, it was one of our people we had transported, the same day that I was dealing with Miss Tevz, I think her name is, from Infection Control. Yeah. And I was also getting calls from our VNA about the same thing.
Excellent. The one person that was unprotected, the paramedic, is he receiving full pay from his full-time job? Because I know our paramedics are part-time.
Yes, he is, yep.
Excellent.
No issues at all there.
Excellent.
And he had protected himself, except he didn't protect his eyes, and he gave an aerosol treatment, and that gave us, I think BI would have said he could come to work. I think he was glad to be able to work from home, to be honest
Right.
with you.
No, that's good, thank you. One of the other things that I have found is trash removal for patients that are stuck at home, that they're positive. Is the town gonna do anything about getting the trash delivery, especially people who go to the dump? The goal is to keep these people on their property and not anywhere else. Is there any alternative plan for that?
I think, as I've had discussions, that's, if it's a dangerous situation, they can call. I think if they call dispatch, we'd find a way to deal with it, but generally, that's where I think your friends and family and social media get involved in trying to get someone to help them with that at that point in time. There's really no official town response to picking up trash, and we've checked around to find out what other towns are doing, talked to other health agents, and that the town is prepared to respond to an emergency call that someone makes if that becomes a major issue, but generally speaking, that's where your social network picks up the slack.
Well, see, that's where there's kind of an issue there, is that anyone who's positive, anything they touch could actually transmit this also, meaning that trash becomes an
Right,
issue.
well, you'd have to
So
take-
therefore, well, please, is that one of the things that I do is to mix some bleach and water and spray the trash all down first before it goes anywhere and anyone touches it. That's a great alternative to protect anyone that's picking up your trash, especially our garbage disposal people and our trash contractors in town that may end up touching the trash, that they don't know these people are positive for the possible transmission. So, and there's a lot of different ideas about how long it stays on a certain surface or whatnot. We really don't have a clear understanding of that, depending on moisture content, temperature. So I think that is an issue that needs to be addressed at some point.
Well, again, I certainly, if my neighbor needed my help and I was going to go grab their trash for them, I would take those precautions and make sure that I bleached everything down before touching their trash. And again, if it's a situation where the trash is piling up and it's an emergency and they call the town, I'm sure the town would try to work with them to find something out. But generally speaking, what I'm hearing from other communities is that's where your social network comes in. Again, you have to practice, you have to have safe practices. But just as what you're doing with your trash is what your neighbor could do for you for your trash if you were confined to home.
I'm putting it out there. Also, the Purell was at the front door. It's not there anymore. When you walk through the door, anytime you touch a surface, you're going to want a Purell. I mean, I carry these with me all the time. These were actually a Christmas gift I gave to all my kids and my family as a stocking stuffer, but now they're thanking me because I did get those. But again, thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's good to know that we have a timeline and the people can actually see a timeline of what the town is doing and how it's being done. So I thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Welcome. Again, that's who I think the visiting nurses deserve some kudos there. They're doing a real good job.
And Tom, please, and also the other chiefs as well, let your departments know how much we appreciate it. I don't know whether or not it's the unique nature of our ambulance service and fire service being on a volunteer basis, but it just seems that the effort we're getting seems to be going above and beyond. Maybe it's a question of community pride, being part of the community for the most part, but you know, I know our police, everyone's been responding. I've heard nothing but positive reviews. So please, all of you, thank your staffs for what you're doing. They are the ones that are literally putting their lives on the line out there on our behalf, and it's appreciated.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, two more points just to piggyback on what Tom said. In addition to the three chiefs and their departments that are going above and beyond, the other issue is that we do have, you know, support staff that's supporting them in their endeavors, and Tom mentioned the Board of Health and our health agent who's, you know, been coming in additional hours, making sure that he can stay on top of everything. And then in addition to that, our O&M department that's been helping to maintain the buildings, as Tom mentioned too. These are folks that are here to support public safety because that's really our priority, as we discussed at our last meeting, to make sure that all happens. And then the second point is that the chiefs all, as you know, we have small departments. And if our departments get hit by, you know, a double-digit % of people that are quarantined because of the COVID-19, it puts their operations in jeopardy. Having said that, each one of the chiefs has contingency plans as to how they would operate with less and less and less staff. So that there are mechanisms that they have in place to deal with that. They've already done that contingency planning, and that is in place.
And I guess I'll just piggyback on that because it certainly wasn't my intention to overlook the job that the health agent and the Board of Health are doing. I know I've had several conversations with the chair of the Board of Health. They are on top of, just as you get all your updates, they're getting their updates, and they are adapting to an ever-changing world with new responses, and so that they also should get a great deal of credit for staying on top of this. I'm sure that they'll probably have another public meeting sometime soon, perhaps virtually at this point, so that, thank you again. Did the other chiefs have any thing they wanted to address specifically? Chiefs? No. All right,
Oh.
thank you very much.
I actually have one other thing, I'm sorry.
Hold it, Tom.
I'm sorry. Since the dispatch center is open anywhere, are we keeping a list of who's actually coming into the building? So in case something does happen, that we can track back people going in and out of the buildings?
I doubt it, but we'll let-
Okay, no, I just wanted to know.
We don't have an actual list, but we do, when somebody comes in the building, it's in our log, we've been there.
Okay,
And it's office. As a walk-in, we're encouraging people not to come into the building, but ask the board of selectmen to continue that. Today, we did have, had some people come in, the stuff that I would not consider emergency at all, coughing and hacking, we had to have somebody come in and eliminate the lobby again. That's dangerous to them, dangerous to my dispatchers, my dispatchers, dangerous to our police officers. It's not helpful to keep the thing running. Anything that can be done by telephone, please do it by telephone. I'm happy to talk over the phone, we do a lot of things over the phone. It's a lot safer. Some of the things that I'm seeing, I was on a conference call yesterday with a bunch of chiefs. It seems to us like, once it gets in the station, that's the worst part of this. We're gonna be issuing some addendum orders today to my officers about not coming to the station, sealing off dispatch, protect dispatch from that. You're probably gonna see, cruisers going home. We're very unique in Carver. We've had this system in a long time, having the cruisers issued to officers, and that's the best thing we have. Taunton lost the entire midnight shift, 13 police officers to sharing cruisers. They're all out. That's would be very difficult on us. We're lucky everybody has a car. For the duration of this, take your car home, get in your car at your house, call in the air, and stay in your car. I don't need you in the station. They can do everything they have to do basically from that cruiser. Their equipment's in that cruiser, everything's there. So that, again, gives us another gap. We don't need people in that building. So we were just talking about, I was just talking to the fire chief about contingency plans in case one of our dispatchers gets sick and how we're going to handle that. Because that room is where it all comes to. And if we have to evacuate that room to decontaminate it, move people out of there, we have to have a backup plan. We're working on that now. So we do need to isolate the dispatchers and the lobby. So it's not just that we don't want to deal with people in the lobby, but that lobby connects right to dispatch. And if we get that area contaminated, it's going to be a problem. So that's why we're asking people not to come into the lobby.
Very similar to the fire station. We only allow one person in the lobby at a time, and we do keep a log as far as any permits or any business that's conducted. Dispatchers are separated by, at least 8 feet. When we keep the dispatch window open, it's a tiny bit. We're practicing. We put the paper down, we put it out there, they take it out. There's no hand contact, anything like that. So it is confined just to that one area, so it can't be any better.
excellent. Thank you guys very much, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda is discussion and possible vote for moving forward with current candidates for the position of interim town administrator or opening to a new pool of candidates. As everyone's aware, we were supposed to be interviewing 3 candidates this past Tuesday. In discussion with Sarah and I had a long conversation about that, and then I contacted each of the board, and we arrived at the consensus that given that one candidate was going to felt that they were unavailable to meet in person out of just concern for the pandemic and social in contact, we felt it was better to put that meeting off. And given that we only had, that would have brought us down to 2 candidates as well. And given that situation, upon discussion, we thought it was best to reconvene today and discuss how we want to move forward. I think as Sarah and I have talked, our thought process was, why don't we open up for additional submissions and maybe run it to a week from Monday, take it out to, what would that be, bring it to, the 6th? No, the 13th. We did have a couple of people, the ex-interim, Jim Purcell, had a couple of ideas about some possibilities that might be interested. Again, we'll reach out to the Collins Center and just have them double-check with their folks. But what I'd like to get input from the board on is how to move forward. Again, just what Sarah and I kicked around was the idea we extend to Monday the 13th and see who we have for candidates. And assuming we don't end up with 10 and that we only have, maybe we pick up 1 or 2 more beyond the 3 that we had, we would just conduct those hearings, again, probably virtually, at that point in time. So wanted to get some feedback from the board about proceeding and see what your thoughts are. Alan?
Yeah, I'm going to throw kind of a curveball. I've been thinking a lot about this, and with the COVID-19 emergency going on, and we seem to be spinning wheels a lot and a lot of hoops, and I think going with an interim, all of a sudden they're going to have a brand new board, potentially having 2 people that have never even been selectmen, but they been part of another board, to expect them to go ahead then turn around and get a full-time position. I'm wondering if we should consider just going with a full-time position, 1-year contract with a town option for 2 more. That way, at the end of the year, first year, or after 6 months or so, the board doesn't like the job performance of who's ever selected, they can go ahead and say, thank you for your service, but over the next 6 months, we're going to be looking for a replacement. Because I think, we're going to be doing this, and then 3 months from now, they're going to be going through the same hoops again to get somebody else in. That's disruptive to the staff in the town hall. That's disruptive to, the staff of all emergency management. The more upheaval you have by going with an interim and then doing your search for a full-time, I just think that's a lot of extra stress, especially during these times with COVID, that the town just doesn't need. And I think that's something we should really seriously consider doing, because right now, if we go with an interim, let's say that person can only work 18, 19 hours a week, I think we need to have more important decisions going on that need someone in there full-time, even if it's an interim, because of the fact that, we have a police station project, we have the finishing up the playground, we have a lot of different things. We have the grant sitting out there for the Route 58 Montello Street. We have a lot of very important things that I don't think we can allow to just wait to go by because, I've done my 19 hours, and I don't think that does a good service to the citizens of the town. Those are just my thoughts.
No, I appreciate that, and I think going into this, we said from the beginning that we are open to everything from installing an internal candidate that could be on a part-time or full-time basis, to hiring an interim. I know some of the interims, because they're retired, they can only work part-time, or we could look for a full-time candidate. So I don't think this. I wouldn't want to see us restrict our search now as terms of what we want. I think we want to go through the candidates we get, and then that certainly is one of the considerations when it comes time to make a decision after we've seen who we've seen, whether we want to go internal, external, and for what length of time. So,
then that would mean during the interview process, we'd have to check with them to say, are you willing to take a 1-year term with a possible 2-year town option at the end of that first year? It would be sort of like a training period or whatever.
No, absolutely. I think that has to be part of the discussion.
And I appreciate what you just said too, Alan, if I may, Mr. Chair, just to bring everybody up to speed a little bit on what is in front of them that Shelby graciously copied for us. These are all the emails that have taken place since the last time we met to talk about this. And I do want to say that the one candidate asked that part of his email be read as to why he did not want to be here. So if I could do that.
Oh, okay, I wasn't aware of that.
He said that he was, quote, discouraged that the board had not, quote, offered the ability to meet by electronic methods, end quote. He told us he was, quote, able to travel, unquote, but wished to have his name withdrawn, quote, from consideration for the interim town administrator position at this time. He continued, quote, I remain interested in the permanent position should that become available after this public health crisis has abated or an alternative means of conducting interviews is established, end quote.
Right, that's what I had referenced earlier, is we had one of the candidates drop out and felt,
Right.
to be fair, that we needed to develop a different approach in interviewing the candidate.
Right. So I guess so I wanted to touch on what you two said about Jim Purcell. Ron directed me to actually call Jim Purcell.
I think direct is a strong word.
It's
think
okay.
we had a
I like it.
conversation.
It's fine.
And you volunteered to make a phone call.
No, you
can't
told me,
direct
just call him. That's what you said. Anyway, he was our former interim town administrator, as you recall. And he is currently an interim in another town, but it looks like he's going to be there for a while. So he himself is not available. But he did recommend another person who, in fact, Shelby tells me just called and left a message here for me today. I've been trying to get in touch with her. So if you consider the three we had, and then the one that came to us after the deadline because the applicant was waiting for the Collins Center to post it, which he didn't understand that he needed to be in their pool of interims. So that's 4. And then with this woman, if in fact she's interested, she may be calling to tell me she can't do it. I don't know, because I haven't spoken to her yet. But that would be 5. And I kind of think we owe it to those folks to interview them as soon as we can before we decide to open it up again. It just doesn't seem fair to me somehow that they, for the most part, they got in front of the deadline. They've turned all their stuff into us, and then we go off and look for more people right now.
I personally have no problem at all in interviewing those 5 people.
Good.
Because, before we go out saying, no, we need a whole new pool, let's see what we've got.
Let's see
But
what
as
we've
part of
got.
that interview process, see if they would be willing to consider a 1-year position, just so, and it's,
Yep.
can you work full-time hours?
you work full-time
Because
for a
those
year?
are those are really my 2 big things.
And Alan, I really agree with you on that possibility of a full-time situation. I mean, we just heard from our public safety departments, and the last thing we need right now is, in my opinion, for someone to come in who doesn't really see how we work here, has to be educated and come up to speed. And I mean, maybe everyone will to some extent, but I think it would be good if that stability of a full-time person was here too. It just gives us sort of confidence and a little normalcy.
So if I understand what perhaps you and Alan are saying, then as opposed to opening it up, you're saying add in this 4th person that applied over this past week. And if this additional person that you just phoned is interested, add them in.
Right.
But instead of opening it up, we'll go with those 5 or 4, depending on what news
That would be my feeling.
that person has?
Yeah.
All right, well, that's what we're discussing. We're trying to get a
Okay, yep.
consensus as to how to move forward. I would remind you that the current town administrator's last day is April 17th. And while it's possible that, I know I had a conversation with Michael, and it's possible that if we needed an extra week or 2 weeks, that he could function, as an emergency, in an emergency, in that position going forward if we had to. We can deal with that when we've got a couple of weeks to work on this, and
So-
we can discuss that at that time if necessary.
So when were you thinking to moving the interviews with the candidates to? What date?
Pardon me?
What date were you thinking of moving the interviews?
Well, if we're,
Two.
if this is the way we want to do it, if this is the consensus from the board, then we could start talking about next week. But what we run into is Bob and Alan generally run opposite schedules. One's days
yeah.
and one's nights, and so that I guess I'd turn to Bob and Alan. Do you folks have any sense of what you're looking at over the next week or 2 for schedules?
Mine's still evening shift. It always will be. If I need time off, I can see if people can cover me for it.
Must be a tough time for that, though.
Well, to some extent. Our per diems are basically been cut. Their hours, they're not getting any more hours.
And that's
So
basically
it's-
Monday through Friday, correct?
No, our regular meetings, I have automatically off.
Okay.
That we've already scheduled in. I have those ones guaranteed off.
So, for instance, next Tuesday is one that you would have off
Right.
automatically.
That one I won't. Basically, for the next week, I'm working days Saturday, Sunday. I work at home Monday, and then Tuesday and Wednesday, I'm working the afternoon evening shift, and then I have 2 days off, I believe.
All right, so next week then, when are you around during the day?
Should be, Tuesday and Wednesday.
Tuesday and Wednesday.
Okay.
That's fine with me.
All right, so do we want to say Wednesday just to give the candidates the extra time?
Okay. And what,
Maybe
and
they'll give us time to figure out how we're gonna do the video interviews.
Yes, I'll be
seven,
at some point I'll be calling all of you and just trying to make sure that it works, since apparently I'm the one that has to, unless, I'd be more than happy to have someone else be the technical director on this.
No, I
So-
think that's a good job for the chair.
so Ron, this is Wednesday.
And I did want to just repeat again that with these meetings, there'll be a link that'll go out to the website and to Area 58, and I believe Area 58 will be able to
You can call Area 58 and have them join our meeting.
have them what?
Join our meeting. You can send them the link and have
All right,
Area
but
58
what I'm
join our
saying is,
meeting.
with technology, I am sure there's a way to make sure everything gets broadcast out there, so that,
Now-
in keeping with the governor's request.
Very important question. The date is Wednesday, April.
That would
8th,
be...
April 8th?
No, that would be
You can use your phone right there, it has a calendar.
is that the 10th?
I think it's the 8th.
No, next Wednesday
Ninth?
is April 8th.
Next Wednesday's the 8th?
Yeah.
Okay, right, okay. All right, so we're talking April 8th. We will make an attempt, I'll work with Sarah, we'll make an attempt. And again, I just want to remind everybody that the board had, at one of our meetings, had empowered Sarah to sort of run a point in a lot of this. And I just want to let everybody know, because a couple of questions have been out there, that she and I are talking daily, literally daily. I see Sarah's number come up. I think my wife is starting to get concerned. But literally, I
Don't
just want
worry,
to make
Sharon.
sure. I want to make sure everyone understands. This is not, Sarah's not going rogue. I'm not going rogue. We're trying to keep the board informed of everything that's going on. It's really just been the logistics behind the scenes that we've been working on.
Right.
Sarah has printed out basically a summary of everything that we've been doing.
I have.
So that, and that's the way, we are trying to be as transparent as possible
Yeah.
with this whole process, and we will make sure, for instance, the chiefs will be invited, this way, by going Zoom, we can exceed the 10-person rule, because everybody can be on there. The chiefs will have an opportunity to ask questions. Finance director, the people we identified last time to participate can get right online and participate, so.
And Ron, if I could just briefly, this long email thing that you have here, originally, it's really hard to print them off, because as you know, when you start printing off one, then the ones under it don't show who it's to or from. And I wanted to let everyone know and make sure that people know that these are always copied to Ron and Elaine. So anything I send or receive, and so the reason the first few pages starts with A and B is because I realized there was a series of things I hadn't copied after I numbered everything already. So those are just earlier dialogues, and then it starts with the numbering. I tried to put the name of the person on top, so you'd know that everyone from candidate X, those were all together like that. There are a few between us and the Collins Center, and I think that's it. But anyway, so just so you know why it's lettered and numbered the way it is.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Along that line, too, I really hope that the citizens can understand during these trying times, we're doing a lot of having to make changes on the fly, that, we're trying as best we can to adhere to, 48 hours or more notification, but we're going to have to make some adjustments. So if we end up with only a 24 or 36-hour notification, it's not because we're trying to hide something. It's that, trying to get all the pieces together so we can get this to make sure it is open to the public so they can watch. Because I think it's very important for the citizens to be able to watch as we go through the interview process.
Oh, yeah, all the interviews will be out there available to be reviewed, absolutely.
And Mr. Chairman, we're talking about the morning of April 8th, right?
Yes, the morning of April 8th,
Oh.
and,
Starting at what time?
well, I was going to say, if we get 5 candidates, Bob, you have to be at work at 2,
Yeah.
and Alan?
I'd have to, 2:30.
2:30, all right. So if we went 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, just in case we had 5, we'd be done by about 1, hopefully.
Does that give
And that's
you-
enough time for Bob and Alan, for you guys
Yeah,
to get
I
to
wouldn't
work?
want to go any later than 1.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, Shelby will post an agenda today that interviews will start take place on Wednesday at 8 o'clock. And then, as you guys figure out what the sequence is, then on Monday, we can put people in the time slots that are there. So we can
Okay.
amend the agenda on Monday as to who's going to be there. But at
Well-
least today, it'll be posted for its 48 hours.
Actually, we'll put the people in the time slots, because what we did before was,
That's what I just said, is that you'll do that and give it to Shelby so she can then put it on the agenda.
so we've been doing them alphabetically before. Is that the way you'd like for me to?
Yeah,
Well, it
Continue.
could be depending on their availability.
depending on availability.
That's
Just-
true.
yeah.
That's a good point. Okay.
And I think that we need to touch base with them. Hopefully, everyone's available that day. They are going to be virtual, so that we were originally going to get together and try to assign questions to people from the other department heads, but since they can participate, that's not necessary, so we can each come armed with
That's actually
our
good,
own
yeah.
questions.
Can I, let me just jump in there, is that if you want department heads, they're not going to be able to participate in the interview process.
Yeah, they will.
That's going to be problematic, because when you're doing the interviews for this, the protocol is they each get asked the same question. So you guys should have the questions lined up. You can ask follow-up questions, but you should solicit questions from the chiefs if they want to participate.
Well, we'll tell everyone they have to ask the same questions of every candidate. They can't.
And it's very easy for them to be invited, as long as you know their email, so they can be in their office here
Right.
or at home.
No, I think Michael's point was that they can't ask different questions of different candidates. They're
Correct.
supposed to
I-
ask the
I
same
think they know
questions
that.
Of each candidate.
I'm
so that
pretty
we
sure
can-
they know that.
We don't need to get their questions ahead of time. We just have to tell everybody the questions you ask one candidate needs to be the same questions you ask other candidates.
Mr. Chairman, on that line,
Although
can I, before you...
sorry, yes, sorry.
I just want to go ahead and say that there may be some reticence of some of our department heads because of asking questions, just because of the fact that sooner or later they may be working for that particular candidate, and if that particular candidate didn't like the tone of the questions, or, oh, how dare that chief ask me that question, or that person ask me that, I think it's better we get the questions from them and then we do the asking, not, they can listen in, I have no problem with that, but I think to protect the innocent and so they can, maintain some distance from this process, I think, we're the ones that have to ask the questions. I would feel very reticent myself if I was a department head or a chief asking a question, knowing I might have to work with that person.
Maybe we should ask them what they would prefer, with the department heads or chiefs.
I was just going to say, I agree with Alan. I think it's a tough position to put a department head in.
Well, we're not asking the
question.
department head to pass judgment, simply to ask questions. But I mean, I'm open to whatever
So the
works.
protocol is, let's try to be professional about this, is that normally the protocol is that a 5-member board would have either 5 or 10 questions, somewhere in between there. They're already pre-scripted. One person would ask a question about public safety, one would ask a question about finance, one would ask a question about conservation. Whatever those topics are, that there would be the same sequences there. I've never seen any interview process ever where, for a town administrator manager, where you're bringing in department heads to ask questions. That's just inappropriate. Now, they can feed
I'm
you
not-
questions.
I'm not sure
just
about
saying
that, but-
it's, from a protocol, it's inappropriate for how it's normally done. What I am saying is they can give you questions, their concerns, but you guys are the ones that are hiring them. You're the ones that are picking this candidate. You're the ones that need to
Mr.
ask the
Chairman.
questions. You need to be consistent with each party.
Maybe the chair should make this decision.
Bob, go ahead.
I agree with Alan, okay? I think the process that we had before, if they have questions, please bring them to us, and that we can do it that way.
Okay.
I think that's the best option, just to keep them out of the fray of anything, possible issues or whatnot that could come up in the future. I think that's the best way of doing it. I also, one of my things here was about questions of, that we have a list, because we don't want to, each one of us asking questions is, we don't want to sit there and say, oh, well, I have 15 questions right now, or possibles for it. I think we need to come down with a list of what
Right.
questions we're going to ask, all right? and then go ahead and move on from those questions. So I don't know how we want to handle that, if we're going to, each one of us put our questions down and send them into the chairman and then go ahead and...
Yeah, the last
or-
time when we thought we were going to be meeting on Tuesday, Sarah and I were going to get together and go through the questions that we've received. We've actually received a lot of questions from the chiefs. We've almost got questions from everybody that wanted to submit them at this point in
Right.
time. So I guess if we ask the board to submit
same.
questions over the weekend, Sarah, you and I can try to
Yep.
get together on Monday again?
Yep, absolutely.
Or virtually, or whatever
Right.
way we get together.
And remember, when we're submitting questions, we have to consider how long to give the candidate to reply. You don't want to overload them with questions where they can't fully explain their answer. So you got to be careful about that. I mean, if we go in with
Right.
like 25 questions, that only gives them a minute and a half to answer, and
No,
that may
that's
not be-
understood,
Right.
and in fact, I think one of the folks we reached out to had just got through interviewing some permanent positions and had shared some questions, so that we can look at that and the length of time and so forth. I guess one of the concerns, though, is as we look at the resumes of these individuals, and maybe that's where the individual questions come in, but I know we talked about having standard questions that every applicant gets asked the same questions, but you know, we have a couple that some people have, if we want to ask about something that's occurred in their past, is that off limits? Normally I think if we have an issue based on something we read in a newspaper article or something that, is well documented, that might be appropriate to ask one candidate, but
No.
not every candidate.
Well, no, actually, sorry, Mark.
I was just going to say, I think some of those things are appropriate, and I think when you interview a candidate, there's going to be some unique things in everybody's characteristics. I think, for the most part, 80, 85, 90% of the questions are going to be the same for every candidate, but you may have one or two particular to an individual candidate, depending on their background and personal experiences. I think it's important for the board, if there's a question or somebody has a concern, that get asked. So it's...
Yeah. I think it's possible to ask that, what I was going to say was I think it's possible to ask that kind of a question of all of them. Because for all we know, we may have done our homework and not found anything, negative on candidate Z, but there may be something that they may want to talk about. And I think it's only fair to ask them all that same question. I agree.
Well, again, I guess I'm a little confused. If we know something specific about a specific candidate, are we saying we're not asking that specific question? We're just sort of putting a general question out there?
My
I think
thought...
we start off with a general question. then
Excuse me.
do a follow-up.
Excuse me,
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair,
This is
this is a
about
discussion
us.
amongst us,
Please.
I think.
Well, no, but I mean, if Sarah and I are going to get together and try to come up with questions after everyone
So-
submits them,
so the
I think
idea-
we need to know if we're allowed to get specific. If Alan sends in the question for one candidate and says, I want to hear about this that I read about in the person's
So I
past."
think it can be really general. Could you please explain to us any negative content
Okay.
of articles that are out
All
there
right.
about you that are
I
out in the
just
public
want-
domain?
Again, I want to make sure if we're going to do this is our one crack at it.
Yeah, I
I just
know.
want to make sure we have consensus about how we're going about it. And if this, and so I have, no problem with what the consensus of the board is. But I
Right.
do want to make sure that if members of the board wanted to specifically ask about a specific incident, that the board's in agreement that we shouldn't perhaps do that, but we can ask a general question about, would you like to address any possible, negative issues that you may or may not be aware are
That's in the-
associated with your application?
Yeah, that's in the public
Something-
domain. Instead of saying on date such and such, there was an article that said,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
That
I
way
agree
it
with
keeps
that.
it general and...
But again, you can ask the follow-up question for some more detail if you feel that it hasn't been fully explained. That's within the parameters of how these interviews normally go.
Well, and that's my biggest concern, is you may ask the question in a general way, but the individual may not answer what your particular concern is. And
You can drill down.
You may not like his answer, the person's answer.
You may
So,
not.
it's going to
I also don't want to
the
go off on a
applicants.
tangent, though, if we're trying to keep all these to an hour.
Oh, I realize that.
So if
But
you-
again, I think there's a way where we can arrange it, where we can call the next candidate and say, don't call in until we let you know.
So I think-
if one runs a little late or one runs a little early, we can handle it.
So, and to Mark's issue, so if we know that there's information out there about candidate A or B, but we don't know of anything negative about candidate D. And all of them answer honestly, except for candidate A, who says, well, everything's fine. Everyone loves me. There's nothing out there. That's your answer. The answer is
that is an
that's
answer,
not
but,
true.
you know, sometimes you want a little more information, and I think it's important to have the ability to get that information if you think it's important.
Well, yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, then, is everyone comfortable then that we will begin interviews on Wednesday, April 8th at 8 in the morning? I will probably be getting in touch with you just to make sure our Zoom is working, maybe try to get us all on there briefly with no discussion. I'm not going to put an agenda out there, just to make sure, just touch base, everybody's in, make sure that it's working.
That's a good idea.
So this will be, so we'll basically be at our own homes or
Yes.
offices.
Right.
Exactly.
So if I want to have a virgin Bloody Mary, I can do that during the interviews.
Yes,
Thank you.
I'm not going to address what you're imbibing during the course of the interviews.
Oh, thank goodness.
All right, Bob?
With that, I agree with the general questions to all of them. They should be general, and if we need to follow up questions, then so be it. That's part of the interview process. I do have to say is I'd like to see some alternate questions than just the standards that are out there that get asked all the time by interviewers.
No, the ones you
And-
sent in, Bob, we'll look at those, yeah.
Well, that's, I mean, not just saying mine, but all of
Oh, no,
us,
no,
all of us, okay?
yeah.
That's the first thing. Second thing is, who are the candidates that we're actually going to interview? I think we need the names of all of them to be presented out here to the public.
Oh, sure.
Well, I mean, as
We
of
can do
right
that.
now, it's the same three that have been publicized already.
So-
Tom Garino, Rick LaFond, and
Jack Healy.
Jack Healy.
And Brad
Brothers
Brothers.
has been added to the list.
Okay.
And the
And then I
the
don't
last
mention this
one,
woman.
I'm not sure she's available, but she just called me this morning, is named Suzanne Kennedy.
Okay.
And I believe it's Suzanne K. Kennedy for the middle initial.
What's that name again, please?
Suzanne Kennedy.
Thank you.
I believe her middle initial is K.
'Cause I agree with Bob, because Carver we're a unique town, especially when it comes to our public safety. And so, we will be asking questions that they may not even think of, that they see in other towns that they apply to and stuff, so.
Absolutely.
Right.
That alone is going to, cause some,
It's a good point.
It's again, we'll do the best we can. Obviously, it's one answer might go long, and one answer might be in just two questions. So,
Yep.
all right. Any other comments?
Shelby will get it posted today.
yay, Shelby.
Shelby, I'll send you those names.
All right. Moving on. Request from the Board of Health to request action from the legislature for triple E aerial spraying prior to positive results.
I make a motion, we approve the letter being
I'll
sent.
second that one.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Military leave policy, updating the personnel code. Mr. Milanowski, you want to sort of give us a quick outline on that?
Yes, and I believe this was sent out to you, the town has, actually, I'm going to have the chief come in here and update us on that. Mark?
Morning again.
Good morning.
I didn't bring any papers with me, so just to not expose them to coronavirus. So what you have before you today is a request to adopt a policy that would allow us to compensate Officer Wall, who's our SRO. Officer Wall is a member of the National Guard and has been called up to active duty during this event. And by being called up to active duty, by federal law, we have to keep his job, obviously, which we would, but we're not required to pay him. He gets paid through the National Guard and gets paid a lot less than we normally pay him as a police officer. That obviously it's his duty, and he signed up to do that, and he's ready, willing, and able to do that, and is doing that as we speak. But that does leave him in a bit of a quandary as far as how to pay his bills while he's performing his duty for the town and for the state and for our country. Other towns have personnel codes and have adopted Master General Law, Section 59 of Chapter 33, that allows the town to compensate the person who's on active duty and make them whole, so to speak. The guard pays them a certain salary. It's not the same salary that the town pays them. I would like you to take a look at that and vote to allow us to pay him the difference between what he's getting in the guard and what we were paying him. In essence, we'd be saving money from what we budgeted. We're not paying him his full salary. We'd be paying him a lower amount, but that would let him be made whole to what his normal, regular salary is, not including overtime and details or anything, but that would let him perform his duty and serve our state right now in this state of emergency and still be able to pay his bills at home. So that's what I'm asking you to do in a nutshell. I can certainly answer any questions to do with that. Or
Mr. Dunham?
He'd also be allowed, or anybody in that situation, be allowed to still be earning their sick time and vacation time during this also, right?
yes, that by federal law we have to continue on. His job has to be there when he comes back, and he continues to accrue his benefits. But if we change this personnel code.
I'm fully supportive of this. I mean, not only does he serve our community as a police officer and a school resource officer, but now he's also supporting the country, and I think we have an obligation to make him whole in any future reservists or guardsmen that may come to our employees. So I would
Absolutely.
fully support
I
this.
second that motion. But I do have one question.
Sure.
And presumably, while he's away, because of why he's away in the National Guard, we don't need another temporary SRO because the schools are closed.
Currently, we don't, right, because
Right.
the schools are closed. But Mass law also requires that we do have a school resource officer.
Okay.
We've worked with both the union and the school to post that temporary opening.
Okay.
We do have an officer, Al Silva, who applied for the temporary opening while
Good.
Officer Wall is away. Officer Silva does have experience juvenile law when he
good.
worked in New Bedford. The schools, Superintendent Neef, and the principals all are happy with that as a pick. And once schools open again, Officer Silva will pick up that role until Officer Wall returns.
Okay.
And actually, Officer Silver has received probably 3 or 4 calls from the school while they've been closed about
Really?
issues that are going
Okay.
on that he's had to look into, even though the schools are closed. So yes, we still need to maintain an SRO while Officer Wall is away,
Okay.
and we've worked that out already. So
Excellent.
good question.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I totally support this. What is his rank in the National Guard?
His rank is sergeant.
He's a sergeant?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to kind of make a change to yours to some extent, but I also want to send a letter to the officer thanking him for service to our town and our country at this time.
Definitely.
That needs to happen and with our approval of this.
So you're adding that to, you want Alan to
Please.
add that to?
I so add.
I second that amendment.
Any further discussion?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Just one thing, Mr. Chairman, we are talking about an individual officer at this point, but keep in mind, this bylaw is intended to be for any reservist in
Correct.
any position in town.
Well, that's
that
why I
they
tried
would
to
be
make my
covered.
comments along that line, not only the current one, but.
I think that's what this says in here anyways, so we all understand that. Thank
Yep.
you.
No further discussion. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And again, we'll make sure that letter gets produced as well. Wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Next on the agenda is a emergency medical services retirement classification discussion. I guess since Tom Walsh is still here, we'll ask Tom to maybe step forward, just as he was about to duck out of the room, to explain to us what this is about.
Well, what this is about is that generally first responders, firefighters, police, and usually EMS people as well, are in Group 4 in the retirement program, which is kind of where you put people who are risking their life in their job. I think that the benefits are, I don't really know exactly what the difference is, but the benefits are a little more lucrative in Group 4 than they are in Group 1. I am in Group 1. This has no effect on me. My full-time job that has earned me a pension is primarily as Emergency Management Director, which would not be applied. So this has nothing to do with me. This has to do with, going to have a new chief as of July 1st. Full-time basis will be Michael Ryan. And I think once you start having full-time people and their full-time job is in the Emergency Medical Services Department, they belong in Group 4. And so we checked to see what, as part of getting Michael on board, we checked to see what was necessary in order to accomplish the department being in Group 4 for any, full-time employees from this point forward, and this was what was necessary, a letter from the Board of Selectmen saying so.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Dunham?
question. It says specifically emergency medical technicians. What about the paramedics?
That would be the same thing. That
It
would
would be the
all
same
come
thing.
under.
And this is just for the full-time employee, not for our call EMTs?
Would be
and
for
paramedics?
anyone who is in the pension program, okay? And right now, that would only be, it would be Karen Feen, but I don't think she's affected by this because she's already 65. And so it will be, Mike Ryan is the one we're looking at as being affected by this. He's already got about 18 years in Group 4 as a full-time firefighter paramedic in Norwell, and so this would just be a continuation of the service he already has.
The main reason I asked was for me to be able to vote on it, I have to make sure it's not also pertaining to your part-timers, your call force, because, as you know, one of my sons is part of the force.
No, those people are not, they do not earn any pension
Okay, then
benefits.
I
They're
can-
they're not part of the Plymouth County retirement system.
I make a motion, we approve.
Second.
Further discussion? Being none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Okay, we move now to Town Administrator update.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, as this worldwide pandemic and we're focused on the health and safety of our citizens, there's also an economic impact for this crisis that we're going in. And that economic crisis, has resulted in millions of people filing unemployment. That has resulted in our restaurants closing down except for takeout, which reduces down our meals tax revenue, which we'll, see a significant hit for this last quarter, which we won't actually receive until 2021. This is also going to potentially have some impact on people buying cars, which impacts our excise tax. And again, that would be a 2021 issue. It will impact our permits for people pulling out inspections to come out and build stuff. That will affect our last quarter of this year. And that's on the local level. In addition to that, on the state level, is that although the governor has committed to keeping state aid level for March and April, the May and June payments, we don't know yet. The state, like the towns, is required to have a balanced budget. The state, like the town of Carver, unlike many other towns, has a significant stabilization and reserves put away to handle a crisis like this. We don't know to what level the state's going to tap into its rainy day fund to assist municipalities. We don't know the final details from the federal government as to what they're going to be providing to the state to help municipalities. And I'm saying that from the standpoint is there is going to be some impact. Now, beyond pulling out a crystal ball and figuring out what that is, no one knows what that impact is. However, a few weeks ago, in concert with our finance director and our treasurer collector, we began analyzing the cash flow for the town. We began analyzing what our reserves were for the town. We began analyzing what different scenarios would be for impacts. And through that analysis, again, there's nothing concrete to say this is what the impact's going to be, except that we know there's going to be one. So with that, the first step we did is 2 weeks ago we put in a town-wide spending freeze. Did this in cooperation with the school department. So and this is, an action that the town administrator and finance director have within our rules and regulations that what we can do. And we implemented that spending freeze townwide. That doesn't affect public safety, that doesn't affect essential services. What that does affect is that if there's an expense that isn't necessary to spend on right now, then we're asking people to hold off on that, so that we can continue to monitor how these impacts are going to be. This does not impact construction projects that are going on or projects that are construction in nature. So the playground is going to be completed. That's through bonding funds. Through one-time funds, as well as the police station. We're not going to be slowing down on that. Just as a side note, the police station may slow down at times, even though we've declared that an essential project because we have to replace this building. The contractor may have challenges at different times getting in some of the trades to be on the property. Right now, everything is outside, it's 6 feet away, and it's not an issue. And we'll be doing outside work and foundation work for a while before we get into a point where there may be contractors or subs that we would have to monitor their spacing on that. But again, that's a side note on that. So again, with that, we have put that spending freeze into play. We have analyzed our cash flow for this year and to complete this year, and we believe that we have ample reserves to complete FY20. I was on a call this Tuesday with the Lieutenant Governor and the Director of DOR for Local Services, and one of the questions that I've asked is that, if we're unable to call a town meeting, would the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen be able to tap into stabilization funds to deal with any cost overruns for COVID-19? So they are looking at that, and that's kind of like the last option. But prior to that, we have many other programs and funds available that we should be fine making it through the end of this year. One in particular that I instituted, unlike most towns, is that we have a FEMA reserve fund. So when we get money from FEMA, we put that into a reserve fund because it usually takes a year or two for it to come back. So that we're now in that mechanism right now where FEMA and MEMA will cover at some point some of our COVID-19 costs. So anything that's out of ordinary, we're assigning to this account. For example, Tom mentioned that Dave Siegenthoff has, put orders in, and he did this about a month ago, for 3 sanitary foggers. Those would come out of the FEMA fund. So that's about $200,000 that allows us to better weather the storm as we get through this fiscal year. And so as we look at closing out 2020, unless there's a major hit that the state gives us for our last payments, we should be okay. And I think we're going to be fine there. Now, as it looks to FY21, is that, given everything I said, there is going to be a revenue issue in FY21. We don't know what that is. We can't project what that is. We need another, 6 to 8 weeks before we can even start to imagine what that's going to be. So with that, the finance director and I have gone through the FY21 budget and also in concert with the business manager over at the school, and we've made the following items that we're going to be pursuing. One is that we are not proposing to change the FY21 budget to go to town meeting because, again, we don't know what those revenue options are going to be. But the intent would be is that come July 1, when the new budget would be implemented, the spending freeze would stay in place in anticipation that there is going to have to be some cutback next year. So if we don't need to spend the money for essential services, then we don't. So we've also looked at some of the programs that we were initiating, And one of those was this community living department, which was going to cost about $49,000 when all was said and done as an upgrade to provide enhanced services to those populations that we were trying to do following the senior study around town. At this point, what I am proposing to the board is that from the org chart standpoint is that the org chart have the community living department removed, and that's in essence tabled for a year, and then that can be readdressed and looked at in the FY22 budget. But for the FY21 budget, that the org chart would show existing conditions for library, council on aging, veterans, and recreation. There will be no changes in the staffing makeup of that would stay in place. From there, we do not see any additional items to change for the FY21 budget at this point. Now, looking forward to FY21, and again, I am sounding, an alarm that there is going to have to be some cutbacks that will be made by putting the spending freeze in July 1. That reserves money to be cut without impacts later on in the year once we can assess this. If it turns out that there's an opportunity that this looks like it's just going to be a one-year issue and that the economy does rebound at the end of the summer or through the end of the year and this COVID issue is resolved to put people back to work and revenue comes back in and people can go to restaurants and the meals tax comes back in appropriately, then we're just dealing a one-year issue. And with that one-year issue, we have, again, a stabilization fund. We also, and this is an additional article that I will be recommending to the board to put on this year's warrant, is we had a land acquisition fund that has over $500,000 in it. And that land acquisition fund is from rollback taxes for Chapter 61. My original proposal was that when hopefully one of those parcels was put on the market next to Sampson Pond, it would be a perfect thing for the town to buy from a conservation standpoint and try to reduce development along Sampson's Pond. And the town still may choose to do that. But where these rollback taxes go automatically into this conservation land acquisition fund, what I'm going to be recommending is that these funds go automatically into our stabilization fund. And the stabilization fund is there for, again, purposes like this. It doesn't mean in the future you can't take money if you have built up, which we have built up our 5% that we have agreed to for our stabilization fund. So we've exceeded that number. It doesn't mean you can't take money out of that in the future for, 7.5% is what we have in that number. It doesn't mean you can't take money out of that to buy land in the future, but it puts it in one source, in one bucket, in the rainy day fund, the general stabilization.
I was going to say, you're talking about because we have the capital stabilization fund. We're not talking about stabilization fund.
This is our general stabilization fund.
Which we call the rainy day account, essentially. And what you're suggesting is that to give us a little additional flexibility in case of emergency, that this money, instead of going into conservation, go into that to be returned back at a later date. But if it did turn out that we needed it, it could be taken from the general stabilization fund, although that requires, I believe, a 2/3 vote.
That's right. That would require a town meeting vote for taking money out of any stabilization fund does require that.
And
So
Mr.
again-
Chair, I might add that fund for conservation land was very hard fought. I remember that. And obviously it would take a vote of the town meeting. We can't just decide it on our own.
Right.
But I would like that clause put in there that if, in fact, it isn't needed, that it would be returned to the conservation, the land acquisition fund. Because, to be quite honest, that fund was not intended so much to purchase land, but to be used for all the processes that go into that. We have to pay we have to go out and get 3 assessments of the value of the property. And there's just a lot of court costs, not court, but filing the deeds and, having our lawyer look at it. And so all of that just takes money, which we didn't have for a really long time. So I just want you guys to be aware. And are we talking about taking the money that's currently in there?
Yes, sir. Sarah, what you said is not what I'm proposing. What I'm proposing is that we eliminate the fund, is that we take all the money out of that fund and we put it into the stabilization fund. What the current balance is, which is over $500,000, we are in a national pandemic.
I understand that.
No,
I don't
well, let
need
me
that
finish,
explained to me.
Finish explaining what I was doing because there was some confusion there. Is that all of that money would go in there, as well as future rollback money would go into the general stabilization fund. Now, the town meeting does have the ability, if there ever was a conservation land parcel to purchase, or any land parcel to purchase in the future, town meeting can always take that out of its general stabilization fund with a 2/3 vote, just like you'd have to do it out of the conservation
Right,
land
and
fund.
that's not what I'm talking
I know,
about.
but
What
let me finish, because that's what I'm presenting, and that's what I'm telling you, that's
Okay.
what I'm proposing. Now, when it gets to the board, you guys can obviously amend that, and it can go to town meeting, it can be amended. But I'm right now trying to solve a financial.
I understand
I'm
that.
trying to solve a COVID-19 issue.
I understand
I'm trying
that.
to look at the town's financial sustainability.
I got that.
While still preserving the ability, if the town thought that your idea for the conservation land was the priority, they could still tap into this, but it wouldn't be dedicated to your.
Okay, so here's the problem with that. The intent behind this fund, I just want you guys to know, because I don't know if or when you were on the board when this happened, but I was the conservation agent when it happened, and those funds were intended not to purchase land. They were intended to be a really straightforward, kind of painless way to be able to pay our town council to look into the deed and to do all those little stuff. But the suggestion that we now would have to go to town meeting to do that, you can't operate a business like town hall when you're trying to, purchase some land by going to town meeting every 2 or 3 months. It just doesn't work like that. So I would suggest that you have, if you are transferring this to the general stabilization fund, that there be a provision that any point in time, if this is needed for its intended purpose, there's no town meeting involved. I mean, that just completely grinds the wheels to a halt if you're having to go to town meeting for every little detail.
Question, clarification, please, Sarah, because I'm a little confused now. So you're saying that this account where this $500,000 didn't need town meeting approval to take any out of?
No, it did not. Town meeting approved.
Okay, but who?
So town meeting approved this fund.
Okay, but
I believe
who
it
gets
started.
Who gets? I guess what I'm trying
Sorry.
to get at, dig down at, who has the approval to take money out of this
The
fund?
Conservation Commission.
Okay, so it's under the control of the Conservation
Correct.
Commission. Is there a need, or have we contacted the Conservation Commission? Is
No,
there a
there's a
need for
question.
the full 500 million?
500
Or
million.
well,
500,000.
a $500,000, whatever it is, 500,000.
So I can't
For-
speak for them right
Well,
now.
no, that's what I'm saying.
But I
We
do
need
know
to
that
go
when-
to the Conservation Commission and say, look, is 100,000 enough for this fund right now?
That's
you
a
know,
good idea,
We're
Alan.
saying,
We probably
you know,
should
that
talk
way
to
we
them.
could have at least
Absolutely.
a portion of it we could put in.
Absolutely.
And then when it gets down, we can go to town meeting and say, okay, we need to take X number of dollars out of stabilization to put it back in this account. That's all I'm saying.
No, I think that's a really great idea. I think we should have asked them before we actually
So-
vote on this. And I think that
Mr.
it's
Chair.
really important that people understand that. So, for example, when we went to buy the coal property, there were costs to that. There's just incidentals, that people just don't think about.
No, I think we understand that there's a need to it, but I think we're talking about, all this is predicated on the pandemic we're in now.
Oh, I
don't think we're going to
understand.
be doing a lot of that sort of stuff.
And I
in
think the
immediate future.
purpose for using this for that purpose is
anyway,
good. I just
Bob-
don't want
Bob
people
has a
to
question.
forget what it was intended for, and I want it to be able to be easily accessed by the Conservation Commission if needed.
Bob?
Thank you, Sarah, for that.
Sure, yeah.
I agree that having some usage of this money probably is a lot in that account right now. I don't think getting rid of the whole account altogether is a good idea. Also, I think that going to the Conservation Commission and seeking their approval of it, it should have been one of the first things that have done for this, not just to turn around and bring it up here now and say, okay, because that's really what we're doing, is bringing it up now and saying, okay, fine, here's an account that has over $500,000 here, and we're going to go to town meeting and say we want to get rid of the whole account. Well, that's wrong. I mean, they're still going to have things and coming up in the future, all right? So we don't want to dwindle it down to nothing and not have it. So I think our first order of business is go to the Conservation Commission and ask them, okay, then come back to us and say, okay, fine, all right, how much are they willing to give up of that money? Because they're in control of that money, not us or the town administrator or anyone else, whatever their opinions are, okay? And say, what are you guys willing to do?
And I agree with that, but on a side note, because the way, I've got a little problem with how you're phrasing that, is that, basically, town administrator has an idea, he brings it up to the board. That's what's happened, so now it's the board, we get to have a discussion on it, yay, nay, whatever. We are now having the direction, okay, let's go to the Conservation Commission, say, you don't really need all that much right now. So I think the process, which is, as opposed to the town administrator going directly to the Conservation Committee first, I disagree with that. I think it comes to us first, and then we provide further direction. That's just my opinion.
The only thing I'll add is that we're talking about the stabilization fund, which has, I think, $3 million in it. If we're in a position where we have to get to that 500,000, we are in a dire circumstance.
Well, yeah, that's true.
You can say that 500,000 comes last.
Right.
And we've
Yes.
gone through 3 million through some sort of dire emergency. So I don't want people to think that, that would be the first 500,000 off the top. We can make that the last $500,000 off the top. But we haven't had to dip into the rainy day fund. So we've got an emergency of epic proportions if we are tapping into that 3 million. So I think you have to keep that in mind.
Of course, absolutely.
And I agree with the last, if we tap in, I just don't want to get rid of the whole fund. I don't think we need to get rid of the whole fund.
Well, again, let's get some feedback. I think the first step, let's get some feedback from Conservation, and then we can reconsider it after we get some feedback from them.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to add that I'm in favor of getting feedback from the Conservation Commission, but we are in a very unique circumstance here, and I think we need to, as a town, to be able to access any funds we can possibly access in case of a serious emergency. So I think we do need to ask the Conservation Commission to consider this with some urgency.
Yeah,
So-
no, I agree. I mean, it would, but again, if we reach a point where we need to tap into that emergency fund, we're going to have to call a town meeting. And I can't imagine if this goes another 6 months, I don't even know how you do that, because we can't get more than 10 people in a room at this point. So now maybe some legislation will come down from the state, which overrides that, but that's a long way away. But I just want people to keep in mind as we're talking about this, it's not as if we'd be able to spend that money at the drop of a hat. It would, whatever money goes into stabilization, that which is the rainy day account. If we're exhausting $3.5 million or $3.4 million, whatever it is, we've got some serious concerns, and I think at that point the least of our concerns is the ability to purchase or get involved with conservation lands in the future if we've already eaten through $3 million of our rainy day fund. So
And Mr. Chairman, just to follow up on what the Vice Chairman said, I mean, part of our responsibility is to make sure the town has options. We are in a national pandemic. This is town meeting money. Let's not forget that. This is the legislative body's money, and they can reallocate the funds. Everything that was mentioned about these legal issues, that money can come from other places that we already have on a legal account. So, but leaving that side as it may, because there's two sides of that story that wasn't discussed tonight. We don't need to get into that. But again, I'm looking at the fact that it's actually about $600,000 that's sitting there that, but for two things that I've implemented in the last 6 years or tried to do, which was buying a piece of property on Sampson Pond and working for the Cedar Swamp, there's been no action from the Conservation Commission to do anything with this. So my point being is this is money that's sitting there that's nothing's being done with it. The money should go into the General Stabilization Fund. If there ever is a need to purchase property in the future, you can pull it out of the General Stabilization Fund. And the small dollar amounts, the $5,000, $10,000 that may be needed for some legal work, can come out of our legal account if there was ever an issue. We don't have to get into that right now, but again, the big issue, what I'm trying to do is, we are in 2021 going to have some revenue shortfalls, and I am giving you responsible ways to make sure you have money to address that in the future. And this is one of the ways to do that. And that's my point on this
Alan?
amount of money.
Just, I don't think we're disagreeing with you, and I know I'm certainly not. It's just more of a procedural thing that, you don't just take money from, and, I'm hoping that the Conservation Commission will say, leave us 50,000 in the fund, or something small like that, so the vast majority of it should be able to go in there, and then, again, that's at the lower end of all the other money we may have to take out, but it's there, and it gives more money to the town. So I think it's more of a procedural.
Right. So
And-
Right, and I-
With the
I-
intention to return it when we get past the crisis.
And I
Suggest
should, I
this,
should
is,
add,
if I could, when I started this presentation, I was saying, why don't we eliminate it? I see there's some concerns with that. Again, it's about $600,000 that's in there with the latest rollback that's happened. What I'm gonna come back with is recommend that we take $500,000 out of that. Leave the account like it is. There'll still be $100,000 in there. We won't touch the integrity of the account. But because it's such a huge number, let's take $500,000 and put it in the general
All
stabilization.
right, I think we still need to hear from them, though, to
Yep.
get
That's right, I'll still talk to the conservation.
and I just have one more quick thing to add, and that is, as we all know, the cranberry growers, the economy for cranberry growers at the moment is not really good. And so one of my concerns, and it always has been, is if that should happen, which it has, and it's hit them pretty hard, and these people are trying to sell land, and they have to offer it to the town first, I want to be sure there's some mechanism in place for that to happen, if it's a parcel that we want. I mean, thank goodness there was a mechanism there when we did go and buy the whole property, because I don't know how we would have done it. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Bob?
And that goes to my points that I put in the past meetings that we had, that we have to look at the Chapter 61 land, that if it goes up for sale, that we start looking at those for purchases for affordable housing. Like I said, I want to hear from the Conservation Commission of what are they willing to give up. All right, I want them to create that number. I don't want us to create the number. I want them to create the number. What are they comfortable with? And that's where I'm at. I don't want to go there and say, we want $500,000 from this account. I don't think that we should be doing that. I think, what are you guys comfortable with if you are willing to give that up?
Well,
Chairman, I have no problem, though, if we give a number, would you mind, and explain the whole rationale behind it. There's nothing wrong with us suggesting a number. They don't have to go along with it. But I don't see a problem with us suggesting, they may say, we don't explain the need and what we need, for a potential emergency. They may say, well, yeah, take 50,000. That's not going to do us any good. So, I mean, I think we're getting into semantics. We're probably going beyond the
And
scope of
I
what
really
we're
think
talking about.
we're beating this really hard here. Again, the circumstances into which we would get to that last 500,000 or whatever the amount of money is means we've already burned through 3 million, which means we're in the middle of a crisis where the conversation we're having now doesn't really matter. So I think let's try to just keep it in perspective as to what we're talking about here.
And
let's get feedback from conservation as to what they feel, and then it comes to us to what recommendation we want to make to town meeting, taking their advice into account.
Mr. Chairman, just one final comment on this. I have no issues with going to conservation and getting their opinion, and I agree with Sarah that this fund is important. But I just think as we go forward, as a town, we don't know where this is going to go. And we need to be as flexible as we can and give ourselves as many options as we can. And I think this is one option that we should certainly consider. And I just think that's important in everything we do right now. We don't know where this is going to go. So,
And,
anyway.
Mr. Chairman, my final thing is that, with this, is that there's a mechanism that the money is replaced, whether it's every year a small amount put in, or one time, all right, it gets put back in altogether, all right? Just that
Right, no, I
Not
mean,
put in there.
for me, we're putting it in for an emergency. If it ends up the emergency expires and the money's not needed, then we can, at another town meeting, restore it to where it came from.
Which we may not know for a year or two
Well,
down the lane.
We don't, hopefully,
Exactly. No, but I mean, even once the emergency's over, there's still gonna be financial ramifications.
Oh, sure,
We
right.
have to deal with for maybe years. Just
And I
pointing
just
that
don't,
out.
right, and, you know, and I haven't confirmed what Sarah said, but I do think it's odd that the Conservation Commission would have the right to just go out and spend $600,000 because they don't need any other approvals. That just seems like an awful lot of money.
well, at any rate, that's not at issue now, so. What's next in your update?
All right, so let's see. So again, the sum of what I've just been talking about is that for FY '20, we believe that we should be okay with completing the year with some other reserves we have set aside. It may require the board to take some action and transfer some money, but, you know, we are keeping all employees employed. We have sent the library employees home. We do have all town hall staff coming in 1 or 2 days a week. We're keeping our social distance, and we're following all appropriate protocols from there. So at this point, there has been no reduction in employment counts at this point, and we do believe we can continue that for the rest of this fiscal year. One of the legislative actions that has happened to date is that if there is a COVID-19 overruns, we are now allowed to deficit spend, similar like the snow plowing account. Just put it in perspective, is that we do have that flexibility. And there also is some flexibility that if we needed to tap into free cash, we would. Or we could now without going to town meeting. That can be done with the Board of Selectmen. Again, under an emergency standpoint, we do have many communities that don't have the reserves we have right now, and they're trying to figure out how they can borrow funds to pay their current bills. We have the money available in the liquidity to make that happen. And again, when we get to FY '21, our proposal is to keep the budget as is, a spending freeze taking effect July 1. In anticipation, there is going to be some change in 2021. And the only structural change that we have right now is to change the org structure for the community living department. That would save about $39,000.
You're talking about withdrawing that article?
Modify, well, you still need to do the org chart, just modifying the org chart for the community living piece. So it wasn't a separate article, it was tied into our org chart, because the board's already approved that.
So just going back to the way it
That's
currently
right.
is.
So I'm going to ask the board to revote what you've approved, so we can go back to the status quo for those 4 departments.
Do you want that now?
If you want to do it now, you can. I mean, make my life
Actually, I
easier.
don't know
Doesn't
that
say
we
vote.
allowed votes
Well,
in that
discussion
one, so
vote.
we'll have to do
Yeah.
it next time.
Okay, we'll do that next time.
Mis-
So anyway, so that's,
Bob has a question.
I know that we don't have staffs all being paid. And at some point, the federal government or the state may send funds for this pandemic that we have and we're going
Yep.
through. Maybe the possibility of having staff go to the EOC down to man phones and then try to recoup some of that money back from the state and federal government, if money comes available for that, for our emergency preparedness issues there, as an option to keep people at least physically answering the phones. My thing is not people calling the police station and the dispatches, and that if there are issues, they call a separate number for those than the dispatcher, unless it's a 911 emergency or whatnot, because we don't want people going in there or tying up the 911 operator for emergency purposes. So just my thought process.
so keep in mind what's being proposed, the last revision that was done is that FEMA will pay for 75% of the cost, not 100% of the cost. Initially, the president, I think, said 100%, but it's been modified to 75%. So we'd have to find 25% local money to pay for that. In addition to that is that, you know, I have always followed data. I've always followed what the professionals are asking for. So if that's something that our EOC director requests, we'll figure out how to make it happen. But they're the people that are in charge, and I follow their professional advice. But if they do that, then we will certainly make it happen.
Just putting my opinions out there.
Yep. So, moving on, the next item, the next bullet, is I was hoping this legislation was going to be passed by this morning, but it hasn't been passed, but I'm told that it is going to be passed shortly, is that currently, you, I, the treasurer collector, the finance director, we have no way of waiving interest charges or penalties or late fees. Now, I say that I think we can waive like up to $1, but we have no way of doing that. And
You're talking about people's mortgage payments and,
No.
or tax?
tax payments,
Yep.
excise payments, any payments to the town that are on a particular schedule. We don't have the ability of waiving any of those components. Tax bills, are due May 1st. We're not changing the date for May 1st for them to be there. They still are due. But we know that there are several people, probably hundreds of people in this town, that may have been working for industries that have shut down. Edaville shut down completely, doesn't know when it's going to open up, and many other businesses in town, restaurants that aren't doing curbside stuff are shut down, and they may have challenges paying their bills. And what this calls for is that for the board, because you guys would have to agree to allow staff to waive that period, and right now we'd be looking for a period up to 60 days after they're due, once this legislation is passed. We think it's the responsible thing to do. We're not saying people don't pay your taxes, and your bills. If you can, pay them. If you feel that you need to have a waiver or an extension, or you're not able to do it and you don't want to incur late fees, just send us a quick note that goes to the treasurer collector's office. They can log in that note that you have a financial circumstance that doesn't allow you to pay, and they can then waive those fees for what we're looking for is a period of 60 days. Doesn't mean we don't come back and extend that 60 days at some point, but right now that's the framework that we're looking at right now just to get us through this period.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we vote to go ahead and waive payments of interest and other penalties in the event of late payments for 60 days pending the voting of the legislation.
Second, yeah.
Further discussion?
I guess the only discussion I would say is there an official way that these people are going to ask for this interest to be waived? Is it automatically waived for everybody? Or are they going to have to request it by written note? Can they call? How are we going to?
Right, so let's face it that many people in town have issues going on right now, and many people in town are still receiving an active paycheck.
Mhm.
If you're a public safety official working in town and you're full-time, you're still getting your paycheck and you can still pay your mortgage. So this would not be a blanket waiver. This would be based upon people that can demonstrate some need. Now, again, the bar is not going to be high for that. We're just asking for a note,
Okay. So a written request.
a written request that just says,
It could be an
these are
email.
my circumstances, and this is why I need to have this request, this waiver for 60 days until I can catch up.
Mr.
Absolutely.
We don't need bank accounts. We don't need all that stuff. We just need people to, through the honor system, through integrity, come back and say, I have a financial issue and here's why. Can I have a 60-day extension? And the answer is yes.
I just want to be clear about the method, that's all, so everyone
And that could be an
understands.
email as well.
It can be an email. We haven't set up the process yet because I wanted to make sure the board was supportive of this. So I don't want to define what that process is going to be because we'll let the treasurer collector take the lead in how she wants that done. But it will be some type of action they have to take to write a note and explain their circumstances that satisfies a requirement that the treasurer collector is going to have.
Fine.
And if you don't, and if you don't send the note in and you don't have requirements, then we expect you to pay on time just like everybody else, because we still have to pay those police officers, firemen, EMS guys to do their job.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman.
Bob?
Okay, I think
And health.
a simple creation of a document that says the person's name, address, phone number, contact information, email, all right, a brief paragraph of the financial need for these to be waived. Have that posted on our website out there and promote it in the newspaper, let people know about this, that this is where you can get this information, all right? I think that's the best way of doing it, instead of everyone just writing their own little thing. Us create this document, says, here you go, this is how it's done, and then, like I said, have the finance director,
Well, I mean, again,
take care of
you know, certainly you want input from the treasurer collector as to what
Correct.
the best way to do it is.
Yeah,
But yeah,
that's-
I think you want to make it simple. You want to have it posted on the website so somebody can just go out and click on it to make the request, whatever. I'm sure the idea is not to make it onerous, to make it a straightforward process. As Michael said, we're not looking for bank statements. You know, basically, it's going to be the honor system that, you know, I've been laid off, and so I want to take advantage of the 60 days.
And the other thing is, we just can't post anything about it until the state
Well,
actually takes
Yeah,
it.
if
votes
we
the
vote this
legislation.
today, it's going to have to be subject to approval by the
correct.
state.
Right.
And that was the vote there.
Yep.
So, thank you.
And Bob, thanks for your input, and like I said earlier, we'll let the treasurer collector define that form, and it'll be widely publicized as to what that's gonna be. We'll, like you said, post it, keep it simple.
I think we need a vote.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
I
We-
think also, just as an update, you'll be getting the daily briefings, just an update, you know, as to what's happening in the town. I've been getting very good feedback on this. Elaine, as I said, has taken the lead on this, and then anything new is put in a different color so it stands out. And, you know, this really is what we're trying to use to communicate. Sarah, thank you for posting this on your Facebook pages and again, getting the word out. That's helpful. Does anybody have any questions on this form?
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman. To everyone involved with that daily briefing, they're doing a wonderful job. I've been monitoring those, and I've been monitoring what other towns have been doing, and I think what we're doing on a daily basis is far superior to what I'm seeing elsewhere. It's concise, it's clear, and just kudos to everybody involved, and please pass that along, because it's really, they're doing a wonderful job with it.
Yeah, I know, I personally, I check it at least one, you know, every day, and I love the different colors, because it, you know, now I can go right to that and say, okay, here's what the new stuff is, as opposed to having to search real hard.
And the key is everything is in the same place. You don't have to go looking at different websites or different
That's right.
parts on the websites all together.
Kudos to everybody.
All right, thank you.
One other thing with that, it's good to read. Okay, I've missed a couple of things, to be totally honest, and I'm sorry about that, but one of the other things I'd like to see on that, if we have outreach to some of the other human resources that are out there for food donations, Shane's Give Thanks, I know they're available, but other organizations that are providing services, or even a place to donate money to our Carver residents here, that I need, that there be one localized thing. I don't know if it's the town that wants to do that, or take that lead upon that, but,
You're saying
Well-
add these links to the
Yeah.
update?
yeah.
And
I think-
actually, sorry,
ahead.
on that note, you guys did appoint me the representative of South Shore Community Action Council, and they do a lot of food banking, and they have a ton of other kinds of services, too.
Well, then we should
So-
have a link to
Add
that
a link?
Yeah.
on the thing. Could we see that?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
It's interesting, everything you're talking about is what the intent of the community living department was, to have that central service things here, and, you know, it pains me to pull that back, because it was gonna provide great services to the community, but again, given this pandemic issue, we know we're gonna have to make some cuts. We don't wanna be hiring people that we're gonna have to lay off, and so that's why, you know, it was a tough decision, but that's why we pulled that back.
Appointment to Old Colony Regional Vocational Technical High School. It's a joint appointment with the school committee and the moderator. Joanne Puskar requests for reappointment.
I make a
Have the
motion we
school
approve.
committee already,
Second,
Pardon me?
Has the
School
school
committee,
com-
I think, has already done it, yeah.
okay, so they've taken the action, okay.
second,
I make a motion we approve Joanna
second.
Puska.
Do you guys want to do that again? All right, motion and a second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Minutes of March 3rd. It's a pleasure of the board.
Make a motion we approve.
Second.
Further discussion?
Hold on.
Shelby, you did get all my corrections, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to see that one tabled. I put in a request because it has all the motions on the town warrant, that we approved them, and they're not, that we recommended the articles, and until that actually gets in print, I would like to hold off
Well,
on.
couldn't you just recommend approval subject to changing to recommendation from,
Well, I don't know how that, there's a lot of, I can do that, fine.
I'll second that.
further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and Shelby will make sure that that change is made?
I believe Elaine's already working on it.
Okay. Minutes of March 13th.
Make a motion we approve as written.
Second.
Further discussion?
I just want to, so Shelby, I'm not going to ask this for each of them, but all my changes went into all of these here. Okay, great. Thank you.
I'll be recusing myself. I was not in that, attendance at that meeting.
All right, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? 4-0-1.
No, it's
No,
4-0.
4-0.
Recusal's not a vote.
Okay, 4-0-0 then. Well, then how come we sometimes record a 1?
That's when you're abstaining. That's a vote.
Abstaining, okay. Abstaining versus recusing, good.
See, I did it right, Sarah?
Minutes of March 17th.
Make a motion we approve.
Second.
as
Further
written.
discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Minutes of March 24th.
Make a motion we approve.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The opposed? The ayes have it. Executive session, minutes of January 7th for approval and release.
Move we approve and release.
Second.
Can, these are about the chief's contracts and the, is that what that one was?
Yeah.
It doesn't say what the actual discussions were about for those ones, so,
Yeah, I think that's the
Correct.
time frame. That's my understanding.
okay.
Well, they're sitting right over there, if we need to double check.
January 7th, you want to take a peek at it, Shelby? Okay. Made and second, further discussion. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. January 21st,
Same thing.
I believe that's
approve.
when we came back to do the one that we didn't do on the 7th.
That's right.
Right.
Correct.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. February 11th for approval and not for release.
Move we approve but not release.
Second.
So, if I may, Mr. Chair, why aren't we releasing them?
I believe at this time, council has advised that due to the personnel nature of them, they are they should not be released yet. They may at some point be available for release, but not at this time.
Okay, but isn't the issue finished?
And not
According to
while,
council,
not while the
no, it
individual's
falls
still
into a
employed.
personnel conduct code, and
Okay.
So we're not releasing them because the employee's still actively,
all I know is that from what council said is that it's inappropriate to release them at this time based on the content, but they will be available for release at some point.
could we get a written one on
We can
this,
ask-
just to let them, because I think that it's based on the information that we've all agreed upon this.
Right, I understand.
And everything, and that it should be released, that
I
we have
will-
a time frame of why, number one, it won't be released now, and why it would be released at a future
All
date.
right, we will ask,
We get an opinion for all three of those, just so there's a write-up. as to
Okay.
why
Yeah.
one of them's not
That's
All
a
right,
good
so-
idea.
Mr. Chairman, I vote,
you want to table these
I would
three
like
for
to
now
table
until
all
we
the
get the
three.
input?
yes, I move we table.
Good idea.
Second.
Motion to motion to table the minutes of February, the executive session minutes of February 11th, February 25th, and March 3rd until a future meeting. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it,
Well, it's until we get the letter from council.
Right.
Yeah.
which will be at a future meeting.
Just being very clear.
All right, public records request pending lifting of COVID-19. What's the, what is,
What is,
Council has advised that, given our limited staff at this point, that, and we're just dealing with essential services, that public records request does not fall under essential services, so we don't have any staff people in town hall. that
this is
can
through
perform.
the governor's guidelines that were distributed.
Governor's guidelines, town councils, I'm not sure, but that's what town council has advised.
Bob?
So, I'd like to see something in writing that says that public records requests are an essential, whether it be from the state, from our council, what he's using for a reason for that.
I mean, I would assume it's just availability of staffing more than anything else. I mean, I
Bob,
would,
there's nobody here.
Well, maybe we could
Okay,
just see that
well,
in writing, too.
maybe we need to call
from-
somebody
from
in
KP.
to go ahead and do these.
You're gonna call somebody and with a pandemic going to come in to fill a public records request? I'm not gonna do that.
I think Bob is just asking for a letter from KP since they're doing the other two.
He just said he wants to call somebody in to fill the public records.
well,
request.
but he
That's not
said in
what
the
we're-
absence of necessity. So, I mean, personally, we'd have to discuss it as a board about doing that. I would not raise it to the threshold with everything going on that we should bring someone in to do a public
Well,
records request.
maybe we could
Absolutely
avoid
not.
having the whole discussion if we just had KP Law put in writing.
So when they're looking at the 3 minutes, could you ask them to weigh in on that as well? And see whether or not there's also, I thought I had seen it in one of the governor's,
I thought I had to as well.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
but-
if that's there, then,
Well, and I
that
have
just
no
we-
problem with, you
right.
know,
That's right.
And if
AP
not,
can
we'll
put it out
revisit it
there,
as a board as to
and
what
we
we
can
want to
post
make as a
and-
priority.
and then post it as part of the information sheet.
All right, next meetings, that's going to be very fluid, obviously. Those will
Well,
be called sort
when-
of on
when-
as needed. We have one next Wednesday
Right.
at 8 o'clock.
Right.
But everything else, I think, is fluid. I think the intention for the board is to meet as we need to meet. We're not certainly taking on new initiatives, and it's not business as usual, but we certainly want to meet when it's necessary and make sure that we keep the public appraised of what's going on. We do have an optimistic request for a fishing tournament sponsored by Our Lady of Lourdes at Sampson's Pond for July 18th with a rain date of July 25th.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve pending lifting of the state of emergency for COVID-19.
second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Community announcements, Mr. Dunham?
Just everybody, stay home if you don't have to. I mean, there's people that have to work, you do have to go out and, you know, get shopping done, but keep it at minimum. If you're not feeling well, friends, relatives, reach out to somebody. I mean, this is one of those times where social media is a great thing, so you can reach out and keep in contact and just avoid people until this gets by, because the only way you stop it is stay home.
Mr. Belbin?
I echo those suggestions. People, if you only need to go out just for essentials, we need to stop this, and the only way to stop this is to keep people at home. Don't go out and making these trips here, there, and the other where. If you're gonna go shopping, only one person go into the store, that's it. Go in, get your stuff, and leave. Don't sit around and talk and do other shopping. It's only for essential stuff to go out. It's going to get a lot worse, unfortunately, before it gets better. The other thing is that I'd like to stop my payments as a selectman, and for future. I don't think I should be taking a check for this right now at this time. I'd rather conserve those efforts for the town, so if you could stop that.
The
Mr.
treasurer
Malinowski?
collector has a form to fill out, and the other board members have done this as well. So feel free to go ahead and fill out the form and contact by email the treasurer collector
Okay.
and payroll, and they'll make that adjustment for you.
Thank you.
Ms. Ewens?
Thank you. I just echo everybody's concerns for our whole town. And I also hope as soon as the rain lets up that people can maybe take some walks. Just some nice, safe thing to do in your outdoors.
Mr. Dunham, it was a bad week to give us a bad week.
I'm in sales, not production. I advertise that I don't make it.
Go ahead, Sarah, sorry.
Just, for sanity, we have to protect our sanity a little bit. And listen to the news only twice a day.
Are you allowed to see your grandson?
Yes.
Mr. Townsend?
Thank you. I'll echo what my colleagues on the board have said, as well as just continue to get your news from reputable news sources. If you have a question in the town, look for the daily update, but just don't rely on rumors. There's a lot of rumors out there. Just rely on reputable news sources, and if you have a question, call. Thank you.
All right, and I guess just a reminder that when next you see us, it might be, I don't know what it's going to look like on Zoom, but when you see us again, it will be in a different format. I don't know that the chaos will be any less, and my suspicion will be even greater than our normal level of chaos during the meeting, but we just to repeat, anything we do that is not an executive session will be recorded and available to be viewed either on the Area 58 website, on a link that will be on the at the town hall on the town website, and we'll even get, hopefully, I think we can broadcast it on local cable TV. So just want to assure everybody that these meetings and other committees and boards have been given the same Zoom link. So there are other committees and boards. I know the FinCom has it. I believe several other committees and boards have it. So as they are required to meet during this crisis, they will have that ability to do so publicly.
Mr. Chairman, just on that real briefly, on Zoom, there have been, a lot of newscasts about security breaches with Zoom, but I've also read some articles in later news stories that they are going in and have made a lot of corrections and fixes in their software to go ahead and try to cut down on the hacks. So just thought I'd throw that out there.
And I would mention that the Zoom that is available to the town is actually a different version than you can download for free at home. It is a licensed version that we're actually paying for. I believe it comes with more bells and whistles and probably more protection.
And how do we get it?
Pardon me? The link was sent to chairs of boards. I have the link, and I would send out the invites to all of you to join the meeting.
Oh, okay.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, I think it's relatively safe because of that. It's not like you're putting that link out for the world. It's targeted just specific people who you trust to come to that meeting. So.
And again, and getting to the talk about what's going to happen next week, I think it's pretty evident that basically we won't have others beyond the 5-person board asking questions. However, that doesn't mean that we can't have the chiefs and the people that we talked about have the ability to view the meetings as
Right.
well, so we can still get their input.
Yeah.
So again, to everyone, please stay safe. We're in uncharted territory here. I ask that we try to put politics aside a little bit and just worry about everyone's safety and health. Keep an eye on your friends and your neighbors and your colleagues. And let's just try and move forward. Hopefully, the next benchmark is May 4th, when the governor will have another update. And hopefully, by the time we get to the warm summer months, this is hopefully behind us. But I think all of us should just pay attention to the daily updates and to the updates on a state and national basis to see what is happening. And let's just all vow to work together to provide the best that the town can offer. So thank you very much. Everyone stay safe. And we will be back here at 8 o'clock on Wednesday morning.
Or something.